Hey everybody, welcome back. It's a lovely, rainy evening here, and I'm enjoying it very, very much. We needed that. Our nature preserve has been going up in pillars of fire lately, and, well, this will be a brief repose for some of those fantastic little animals over there. Anyways, I was watching Potentially Criminal stream, and I was watching Sean, and I was listening to the things he was saying, and it's enlightened me that my personal sheriff, despite the bad that he's done, which I've listed brief portion of, he's not as bad as it could be. The Fulton County Sheriff is apparently responsible for presiding over sub-concentration camps, sub-gulag level holding areas where they're torturing people and people are dying and getting, their blood sucked dry by the lice. It's pretty frightening, but it's only frightening in that it's training people to be okay with that. This will happen. People will die. But to normalize it just because they're black, and to collect a tremendous amount of money as the sheriff while the jail falls into pieces and people stab each other with its pieces. Well, it's frightening that can happen. That's what's frightening about it. People like Chimpsky, they talk about damage control. They talk about voting for the lesser of two evils, but they don't do anything to mend the schism when their lesser of two evils loses. And it just goes to show, despite the good that he's done, he was actually an Epstein Island visitor, and he even mentioned that and defended that. You can find that pretty easily. So keep in mind that our thought leaders, they're putting us in a matrix. Yes, I can't butcher an English accent as bad as that, but those people too. Him too. All of our postmodern thought leaders, Jordan Peterson, unfortunately went from good to bad. You can actually see it in the timeline. They're not doing us a lot of good, and that's exactly why Jordan Peterson was targeted, because he was doing people a lot of good. It wasn't just clean your room, bucko. It was literally telling people Jungian psychology, bringing it forth like nobody was allowed to do through the Freudian BS that is literally drowning people, destroying their souls. Henry VIII gets a lot of flack, but people don't understand how sickly he was. He drank port from Portugal, and he drank it a lot. And it just so happens that port was made with lead pots, stored in lead pots, transported in lead pots. Probably not made with lead pots, but transported in lead pots. And he got real sick, and that probably led to a lot of those poor decisions. And he was probably the one, with his chemistry out of whack, that was producing females, air after female air. It was probably his fault. And he had exploded after he died, too. It must have been a messy job cleaning all that up. So I wanted to go over a nice little story about a time that I went to go and see a girl that I had known, friends with a girlfriend, and I wanted to see her. And I ended up going out to this apartment complex and waiting, and I saw three guys that spat at me from a stairwell. And as I was going back to leave and go back to my car, they confronted me, and they pulled a gun out on me. And I was just like, oh, please don't shoot me. And as soon as I saw his arm go down a bit, I immediately lunged into it. Hold on 1 second. Mouse. I lunged into it, and then I pulled it away, like so. And it went skittering along the ground. And then I jumped into it and busted this particular ring fingernail completely clean off. When I went home that day, after the story that will come up, I dumped that finger in a glass of alcohol, and I let out a blood-curdling shriek, unlike anything I've ever let out before. And I think that transcended my previous standard of pain. And so, after I failed to grab the gun on the ground, I picked it up again. But I had already heard that it was empty. I heard it click. I heard it go while it was behind me. And so I ended up dropping in the scuffle my phone and my wallet. And I'm running back for it. One of them picks us up because there's 3 guys, you know. I can't quite remember if they even, in that short amount of tussle when I jumped for the gun, if they were grabbing at my pockets or anything. It's possible. Can't quite remember that because of the intenseness of that particular set of seconds. And I was very, very focused. And quite frankly, I didn't, you know, I would never think to do something like that. But I'm a very intuitive person, and that seemed to be the best decision at the time. And in retrospect, I straight up pulled off the sort of thing that, like, you know, fake defense course guys say that they can train you to do, which if somebody is holding a gun that's loaded and they're serious about shooting you, you're not going to do that. I only got away with that because the gun wasn't loaded. So I took the gamble and I won after feigning a retreat. That is not recommended, but it's what happened. And as I was running around and chasing these guys around this whole apartment block, literally chasing these guys bleeding, you know, they had pounded me, and after I got back up, they pounded me pretty hard, and I didn't drop because I have what's known as an iron jaw. I don't think one person, my good friend, has managed to knock me out, and it took him 2 hits, and he was surprised that I didn't go down on the first one, but he is an enormous guy, very strong. So I'm very, very proud of my iron jaw. But here I am, bleeding, running around these people. And then I see a white car call up. And literally, one of the guys, the taller guy with the gun, he pointed it at me. And I was just like, really, dude? I literally didn't even say it that loud. I was like, really, dude? I, like, mouthed it at him. Kept chasing. And one time, you know, one of them tried to give me back my phone because I didn't want my phone. And I literally slapped it. I slapped it out of his hands, and I kept chasing him. I could have got my phone back. I didn't end up getting my phone back. It got lost. It got picked up by somebody in that apartment complex after that, actually. Very likely. And so this white car pulls up as they're all pulling out to the street onto which the sidewalk was next to that I got confronted on, you know, next to the stairwell on the other side of the sidewalk. And I jump on the car. They get into the car. I'm a little bit behind them. I jump on the car. I jump on the hood of the car. And I grab a hold of the top of the car. And it takes off. And here I am. I don't have any shoes on. I hook my toes in between the area where the windshield wipers are. And I'm holding on for dear life. I'm bleeding all over the top of their car. And I'm screaming at the top of my lungs as I go down Post Road. And I can still remember, like, all the lights and the motion of it and the sound of me screaming. It is very surreal in my memory. And eventually they pulled off into a neighborhood, and the driver is just like, get off my car! And literally I'm on the ground after he throws me on the ground, and I, like, crawl back up to him. I grab a hold of his leg. I'm like, I wanna punch you! And then he takes me by my hair so I don't bite him, because I'm going at him. I'm going to bite him. And he, in the process of the next couple of seconds or second, he steps on the gas, and here I am skittering along the ground. I still have the scar all down my back right here from road rash, and you know, I see the tires. So that was probably the scariest part, is the fact that I was so close to the tires. And I rolled off, and I ended up did something. I didn't go to the doctor after that. I did something to my knee, and I couldn't walk for a while. So that was my story. I hope you enjoyed it. And yes, the police confronted me later on. No, I didn't press charges. They remembered that, and you know what? I really hope they turned from crime after that. That would have been awesome. If at least one person out of the, I guess, 4 people involved there, and the girl that I knew that set me up, which I probably don't think that she's turned from from crime based on what I've seen. One of those 4 people got traumatized by by me enough to quit crime. I hope. You know, I was just talking to my mom, and she's a big fan of DeSantis. She really likes him. And she gets very upset whenever she hears me criticizing DeSantis. But I've explained to her, he's basically a soft evangelical with Havana syndrome. You know, all of that checks out. If you know about the wave of Texas Latino evangelicals, you know, that's exactly the sort of lane that he behaves in. Because Florida recently has copied off of Texas politics, especially so in my backyard on the Space Coast compared to Houston in Texas. A lot of the same things that happened to Houston 2 years ago are happening in my backyard right now. You know, it's evident. And I don't want to be a political guy, you know? I want to be above the bell curve guy. I want to help people get thinking like, politics, that's so baseline. You know, I want to get above that. I want to inspire people to do better and be better. And, you know, right now we just live in kind of a soft anarchy where the only good and the only glimmer, the only light in people's lives are the little bit that people can sacrifice. And you know what? We can all be generators and we can all help each other as long as we're intelligent. We won't waste energy on things that diminish the grand scheme. So, you know, it's anti-Christian to be hateful all the time. And I do, you know, I've fallen into agnosticism for a period of time, but I was never sort of resentful God hater that is nurtured by people like Carlin and Sagan, or not Sagan. People like Carlin, not Dan Carlin, but George Carlin, you know, that guy. Not Sagan, excuse me, that man is an absolute brilliant genius. But, you know, militant atheism, state atheism, you know, that's a very nasty chapter in history. But, you know, the one thing that I ran into the hardest in my newfound Catholic faith is Augustine. Augustine, as he's called, there's St. Augustine up north. Augustine, he was a very important patrician figure, and he did a lot to bring pagans, especially from North Africa and Italy, into Christendom. But one thing that he doesn't represent is true Christendom. And that's exactly why the Augustinian pledge is the pledge of obedience and poverty, but it doesn't include chastity. And that's not something you can have your priests be about. I have personally seen very, very negative effects with the Augustinian pledge. So, you know, sorry to sigh so much. If you like Augustine, great. But you also must see the problem with Augustine as someone from 1700 years ago who was not Christ. And every single Augustinian feast day, I will fast. That is my choice. And you can enjoy eating as much as you want. And even for his name to be kept alive for generation after generation is a beautiful thing, as long as the people are being raised through Christ and not Augustine. It's as simple as that. Speaking of which, you know, the Fuentes crowd got banned off of X. Apparently they went over to Kiwi Farms, but the Kiwi farmers were even smart enough to put up a wall and say, no entry. You know, maybe there is hope for that old website. I can't simultaneously hate, like I have, Null, and love his friend so much. But what's done is done, and I likely walk a drastically different path than I would have, and who knows, maybe Null did me a tremendous favor, and maybe knew exactly that he was doing me a tremendous favor. Or maybe he's just the rotten sort of dickbag that he presents himself as. Who knows? Who knows? He says brevity is the soul of wit, so it's very hard to parse whether or not he's directly obfuscating improper thoughts, or is just nothing growing on there. His memory, though, like, unless he's just comfortable with lying and his memory is way better than he says, he needs to work on that. He needs to get the AD down, because everybody has a level of attention deficit, and it's caused by, petroleum-based food dyes and improper eating, and you need to get that down. You need to take more B vitamins and eat more green leafy vegetables and be more healthy and play brain games to get your memory up, Brain Age on the DS. Fortunately, Fuentes is a paragon of pederasty in the burgeoning trad cat movement. Ugh. But I'm here to make sure that that creep isn't the only young, well, he's younger than me, but young-ish Catholic on the radio waves. And I hope I do respect Google more than the other big three. I hope Google gives me a shot to help young men. Genuinely, because I have taken the vow of chastity, poverty, and obedience. Nobody's perfect. Everybody has wandering thoughts. I've had the absolute honor and pleasure of dating incredibly beautiful and intelligent women, and I struggle to not think about them at times. But I have to stay focused. I have to keep forward. And, being chaste, you have a lot of energy that you can dedicate to thinking and studying and getting things in line. But mostly, I put like my own ability to memorize things so well, and my pseudo photographic memory on the fact that no fluoride, B vitamin regimen for a long period of time, brain games. Genuinely, I try to stretch my perception and conceptualization and the ability to wrangle things with my thoughts. It's a work in progress. Everybody has to work on it. Everybody has to get their attention deficit down. It's not something to be proud of. 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 It's not something to be proud of as somebody who was diagnosed with ADHD and put on medication from 7 to 14. It's not something to be proud of. But something that I am proud of is the fact that my dad comes from OG Union Yankee stock. And I love that. And I'm happy to be part of that side historically. Because, that's just the lucky side. That's just the lucky side. You'd have been unlucky to be born as a middle class or below person in the Confederacy. If there even was such a thing as the middle class in the South. I don't think there was. The Confederacy is like Stockholm Syndrome personified, The shift from the Masons to the Zionists happened in the 90s, and I talk about this a lot. I talk about this a lot to people. You can actually trace how the Masons influenced our country all the way up to H.W. Bush losing. Ross Perot throwing a big old wrench into the election and upsetting H.W. Bush's presumed control over the Middle East and all sorts of other affairs. And that's exactly when the Zionists got their strength and power. And today they have consolidated it through the entire Congress and Senate. And only people like Thomas Massey are the ones sticking up for the truth. It is what it is. Masons, Zionists, I've said it before, I'll say it again. They're both heads on the same Cerberus. You got to take that 2D graph that a lot of people put things on, like the 2D graph of the bell curve, or the 2D split of politics from authoritarian, libertarian, right and left, and you got to extrapolate that. You got to flip that and extrapolate it up on the Z dimension. You got to put aura or diminished. You got to put some extra metrics in that for it to be any sort of applicable to real life. And there are centrists that suck. And then there are centrists that are awesome. You just got to put it in the proper place. And when you do, you'll notice that, high aura is actually the most important metric, not whether you're centrist, right, left, libertarian, authoritarian. About your aura. Skibbity Ohio. All right, all right, all right. Lies fade to dust, but the truth is a beautiful sphere. And it can be cracked over time, but that sphere still remains a sphere in that point in time and can be written down pretty adroitly as such. And one of the lies that has been exposed in the Truth of History presented to us is Mao's Four Pests campaign and the elimination / genocide of the sparrows. Now, I'm not sure if genocide is an applicable word, because that's a word applied to any group of people who is not allowed to breed or replicate their culture to younger generations or speak their native languages. And that is a very, 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 very common thing, genocide. But what we did to the sparrows, well, what the Chinese were instructed to do to the sparrows by banging pots and pans and shooting them out of the air with slingshots is eliminate their locust control. That's right. And so 50 million people died of famine. Half of the body count of communism died of famine because they destroyed their cute, fluffy little sparrows. Don't be like that. Don't be like Mao. And another thing I was talking about, movies and how plays are a little bit better. And the reason why, it's the same thing. But the directors, they like to wipe out a beautiful little area so that they have just one shot, and that's not cool. And the producers, they always chop up things that the director's imagination, flowed into his grand scheme of project that he thought about for years and years. It's a disjointed thing. Whereas you go to a play and you go to the band pit and you go to the casting room, and people are all on the same page. There are different pages for the music, different pages for the acting, but people are on the same page. And I think that's where the best movies really come from, is when people are on the same page. This is the X's Y, and you'll never guess what happens next. All right, guys. Stay tuned. Take care.